Hi, my name is Tanisha Kaiser and welcome to my true crime YouTube video. Today we are talking about international superstar sports hero turned alleged murderer Oscar Leonard Cole Pistorius. We all know the case. We all watched the trial and we were all deeply disappointed with the outcome. If you don't know this case, Oscar Leonard Cole Pistorius, I don't know why I keep saying his whole name. It's just like I've been practicing this forever, so now it's just like in my head. But Oscar Pistorius allegedly shot, not allegedly, he did shoot his beautiful, gorgeous, talented, smart girlfriend, Reeva Steenkamp, the night of Valentine's Day, or in the early hours of Valentine's Day. And what we're talking about is not whether he shot her or not. It's whether it genuinely was a case of mistaken identity or whether he possibly intended to shoot her. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. We are going to start with Oscar's childhood. Oscar was born on the 22nd of November in 1986 in Johannesburg. He was the middle child of three, and sadly he was born without a fibula in either leg, and this is called fibular hemimelia, which is a very rare condition. Sadly, Oscar's parents decided to have his legs amputated at the knee at just 6 months old. But at 11 months old, Oscar was already up and running with his prosthetic legs. Oscar's parents led a fairly middle-class lifestyle. He grew up in a very supportive home, a home where the kids were not allowed to say the words, "I can't." Oscar's mother would tell his brother, "Carl, put on your shoes. Oscar, put on your legs." So they really made a point of not letting his disability become a problem to him or become something that would stop him from being treated like a normal kid. When Oscar turned 6, his mother and father got a divorce, and his mother Sheila ended up having to move to a smaller house with 3 kids, and most of the responsibility ended up being on Sheila. Because of the divorce, Oscar said his father wasn't really in the picture much and he saw him very seldom. But luckily for Oscar, his mother was a really, really supportive parent. Oscar's mother even wrote him a letter when he was 5 months old, and it read, "The real loser is never the person who crosses the finish line last. The real loser is the person who sits on the side, the person who does not even try to compete." Which I think is awesome. Like, that means that he had a mother who really supported him, who was really there for him, and genuinely believed that his disability would not affect him. When he was in primary school, he was surrounded by a good, supportive group of friends. He was always the center of attention. When he entered high school, he started playing all different kinds of sports. Like, he really never let his disability affect him. In fact, I think it was something that really pushed him, because he wanted to prove that he was just as good as the person sitting next to them. When he was in high school, he started participating in a wide range of sports. He played rugby, water polo, he did swimming, he did wrestling, and it's clear that his upbringing and his mother's support and his mother's love really fueled him and really pushed him to do just as well as the person standing next to him who is completely able-bodied. Like, he really, really never let his disability get him down. And sadly, when Oscar turned 15 years old, his mother, Sheila, passed away. This obviously, for a teenager, is a huge, huge deal in their lives, and it weighed heavily on him. He actually got a tattoo of his mother's birth date and the date of her death on his arm. Oscar continued pursuing his sporting activities, and about a year after his mother's passing, he shattered his knee playing rugby. It was then that they advised him to take up sprinting for the rehabilitation of his knee. At that point, once he started running, he said, "I never looked back." Oscar would later write, "Sport was my salvation, as it helped me through a difficult time. My mother had been a strong woman the center of my world. Sporting activity was the only thing that could distract me from such a loss. And this was clear as Oscar went on to focus on his running, and eventually he won the 200 meters Paralympics in 2004 at just 17 years old. And people began to notice his talent and personality. Oscar also went on to start competing against able-bodied athletes, and then there was this whole argument about whether his prosthetics gave him an unfair advantage. It's a long story. They went back and forth and back and forth, and eventually he was allowed to compete in the 2007 Beijing Olympics, but he didn't qualify for the South African Olympic team. However, he did compete in the 2008 Beijing Paralympics, where he won 3 gold medals, and he set a new Paralympic record in the 400 meters. And at this stage, he's just 21 years old, and he's getting international recognition. He's winning medals left, right, and center, and he's setting records. He's 21 years old. Okay, this is some big league stuff for Oscar. The motivation of his mother is right behind him. Now, we get to the stage where he becomes maybe a little bit reckless, which I think at this stage in his life is fairly normal. I mean, he's 21 years old, he's going to party, he's going to want to go out, things are going to happen, and this is not necessarily a reflection of what happens later in life. These are just some things that have happened. Okay. In 2009, February, Oscar's about 24 years old now. Him and his friends go out on the Fall Dam with a speedboat, and he's steering, and he claims that the sun hit his eyes in a way, or he hit something, and this caused him to have an accident. He was flung from the boat and had some serious injuries along with the other few people on the boat. He was airlifted to the hospital and was in the ICU. There was alcohol found on the boat, but Oscar's blood level alcohols were not tested. So we can't say that it was due to the alcohol that the accident happened. But as we said, he claimed the sun hit his eyes or he hit something. However, he's 24 years old. He's riding high. He's becoming an international superstar. He's 24 years old. He's on the Fall Dam. He's on a boat. Like, he probably had a couple of drinks. But I don't know. I'm just saying, he's a kid. He's still a kid. Doesn't matter how many accomplishments he's had at this point in his life, he is still a kid. And kids drink and they do stupid things. But anyway, we will never know for sure because his blood level alcohol wasn't tested. Later that year, so these are all like things that people were saying like caused him to become this murderous man. But honestly, again, like I am not making excuses for this man at all. But I do think that this could have happened to any kid that was on a boat and drinking, or also accidents do happen, whether alcohol is involved or not. Anyway, let's move on. Later that year, Oscar had a party at his house. There was a couple that were fighting, and Oscar's like, can you go outside? Like, all of this is alleged, by the way. Can you just go outside? The couple goes outside. The guy storms back in, closes the door behind him, and the girl that was outside starts kicking the door. She's kicking the door. And Oscar opens the door and he's like, can you go home? Closes the door, and then the wood panel from the top falls and injures her. Again, this doesn't say that he was acting aggressive or anything, but it still happened. She still got hurt. In 2011, Oscar had an interview with the BBC where he stormed out. And this is how it goes. The interviewer says, some people regard you, no doubt, as an inspiration to Paralympic athletes. No question about that. But it might also be said that you're an inconvenient embarrassment to the South African authorities and the IAAF, because effectively you're taking them into uncharted ethical waters. What's your reaction to that? And by that, he's talking about Oscar wanting to compete with able bodied persons. Oscar replied, I think that's an insult to me, and I think this interview is over. Rob Bonnet protested his question was not intended as an insult, but Pistorius retorted, that is an insult. Thank you very much. Many people saw this as a hot-headed response, and at first I didn't agree, and then I thought about it, because athletes are trained to do interviews. People are going to ask them difficult questions, and they are meant to keep their cool, keep calm, and you don't just walk out of an interview. You answer the question, or you say, I prefer not to answer that question. I find that insulting. Do you have anything else for me? They are trained professionals, trained interviewers. They can, trained interviewees. They can't let themselves lose their cool, especially in front of the camera. So this is not a good look for Oscar, I don't think. And it also kind of shows that he did have a little bit of a temper. Perhaps his ego was getting a little bit too big as well. I don't know. I think that it's unprofessional to storm out of an interview, but it was a very offensive question. So you tell me what you think about that. Then we have an outburst at the London Games at another athlete, Alan Oliveira. I won't go into that, but the point is there was an outburst. Then there was another incident in the housing of the Paralympic athletes. It was South African Paralympian Arno Fourie told the journalist that he had to change rooms in the athletes' village because Pistorius was shouting on the phone so much. Who was he shouting at? Why was he shouting? Is the question. Tony Garrett, a reporter that had been following Oscar since his breakthrough in the Athens Games, said his lifestyle and image changed and clearly something got to him and he wasn't the same person. There were so many demands on his time. I think he let rip every so often and he wouldn't have done that a few years ago. So for someone who has been watching Oscar's career unfold over the past few years, for him to say that means that there was a clear change between who Oscar was and who he had become. And it's showing signs of aggression, it's showing signs of a temper, of a hot-headedness, and maybe an inflated ego. I read many accounts of people saying that Oscar's behavior changed after he became successful. And then I read contradicting statements where they said he was warm, kind, and loving. And people who say the former, that he had changed, say that he became a spoiled brat. He had a temper and he was entitled. Not at all who they knew Oscar to be before the fame and the money. But then again, these are all just accounts of people's personal experiences with him. And at the end of the day, we can't really say unless you know him personally. In 2012, Oscar competed in the Summer Olympics in London. He did eventually get eliminated in the semi-final round, but he made history as the first double-legged amputee to compete in track events at the Olympics. He may not have won, but he became an inspiration to many. Now, Oscar was wildly rich, successful, and famous. In that same year, 4th of November 2012, Oscar went to a sporting event where he met a beautiful blonde woman through a mutual friend, Reeva Steenkamp. Reeva Steenkamp was born in Cape Town, Western Cape, on the 19th of August in 1983. She was the daughter of Barry and June Steenkamp and the youngest of 2 children. Throughout her childhood, she became an avid horse rider until she broke her back in a horse riding accident in her early 20s, which was also her last year of university. After being bedridden for 2 months, Reeva completed her Bachelor of Laws degree in 2005 And in 2011, she applied to the bar to become a qualified legal advocate, or she hoped to become a qualified legal advocate by the time she was 30. A smart cookie. Reeva also began modeling as a teenager. As she got older, she grew into a modeling career and she became a model in the FHM magazine, not just in, but also on the cover of the FHM magazine. She was ranked 40th in FHM 100 Sexiest Women of the World poll in 2011 and 2012. FHM described her as a beautiful, intelligent, and warm-hearted woman. She was a presenter for Fashion TV and also the face of the brand, the cosmetic company Avon. Yes, our girl was like, she was hoying. She was not only smart, but she was absolutely stunning and gorgeous. And everybody that met her said that she was an absolutely warm, loving, and kind person. Even the agency that represented her described her saying she was the kindest, sweetest human being, an angel on earth. It just seemed that everybody that knew her just loved her. Once she attained her law degree, she continued working as a paralegal alongside her modeling career. Reeva was also outspoken about tackling misogyny in South Africa. She was actually expected to give a speech on gender-based violence on the 14th of February 2013. And if you don't know why that is absolutely chilling, you're about to find out. This brings us back to 2012. Oscar is introduced to Reeva, and according to him, they hit it off. After some time, Oscar tells his friend that he RSVP'd to the SA Sportings Awards and with a +1, and he doesn't have a +1. And his friend suggests that Oscar ask Reeva. He takes the chance, he calls her up, and she says, "I'll be ready in an hour and a half." They end up going together and have a wonderful evening together. This, according to Samantha Taylor, is how she found out that her and Oscar were no longer dating. You see, Samantha claims that she was Oscar's girlfriend when he was doing an interview with another woman as his date on TV. Now that sucks and it's slimy, but it still doesn't make Oscar a murderer, you know? But let's continue. After the evening at the SA Sports Awards, I think it was safe to say that Samantha and Oscar's relationship was over and Reeva was the new love in Oscar's life. As the relationship progressed, people thought of them as a celebrity power couple. They looked happy and in love from the outside, and after 3 months of dating, they were ready to celebrate Valentine's Day together. Reeva tweeted on the 13th of February, "What do you have up your sleeve for your love tomorrow? Hashtag get excited." Clearly excited to spend the day with Oscar. It's like their first Valentine's Day together. That evening, Reeva arrived at Oscar's place around 6 p.m. and Oscar arrived shortly after. According to Oscar, that evening, him and Reeva had dinner at around 7 p.m. Thereafter, they started winding down. At around 9 p.m., Oscar was laying in bed watching TV. Reeva was busy doing yoga, and shortly after she joined him, they chatted for a bit and went to sleep at around 9 to 10 p.m. Early that Valentine's morning, Oscar woke up. Reeva asked him if he can't sleep. They chatted for a little bit before he got up to move the 2 fans that were on the balcony inside the room. As he was doing this, he heard a noise in the bathroom. He thought he heard the window opening and that intruders had gained entry into the house. He immediately armed himself. He wanted to put himself in between the intruders and Reeva. He told Reeva, "Call the police and get down." Oscar, now armed, walked through the passageway on his stumps. He reaches the bathroom, sees that the window is open, the bathroom window is open, and the toilet door is closed. He shouts for the intruder to get out. He then hears what sounds like an intruder opening the bathroom door. He then fired 4 shots through the bathroom door. He ran back to the room where he realized Reeva wasn't there. When Oscar realized that it could be Reeva that was in the bathroom, he cried for help. He put on his prosthetic legs, grabbed the cricket bat, ran to the bathroom, started bashing the door, was able to open it, where he found Reeva slumped over the toilet, bleeding. He cried for her, tried to stop the bleeding, and tried to keep her breathing. Reeva unfortunately did not survive, and she passed away at the scene of the crime. Oscar was then later arrested despite claiming that he had not intended to shoot Reeva. She was still shot and she still died, so he was arrested. Oscar told three versions of this event, but the one that I just told you was the one that he told in court during his trial, which lasted about 6 months. The prosecution, however, did not accept this. The prosecution was convinced that Oscar did intend to shoot Reeva. They claimed that Oscar put his prosthetic legs on before shooting Reeva, proving premeditation. But the defense had Oscar walk on his stumps in court, which was quite a big story. Lots of news outlets covered that. I remember seeing that picture everywhere, and it was quite a humiliating moment for Oscar. But they did this to prove that Oscar was on his stumps, and that he was on his stumps when he shot at the door, proving or disproving premeditation. So the angle that he was shooting at, they proved in court, meant that he was on his stumps when he shot at the door. Does that make sense? So basically, they disproved the prosecution's claim. The prosecution also questioned Oscar about messages between him and Reeva. One of the messages read from Reeva to Oscar saying, "I'm scared of you sometimes, and how you snap at me, and how you will react to me." They read more of the messages between the two of them, and this really painted Oscar as a jealous, young, insecure man who acted, I would say, emotionally abusive, and he had anger issues, and someone who also acted recklessly with guns, something that was proven throughout the trial. The prosecution claimed that Oscar and Reeva's relationship wasn't as happy as it actually seemed. The case with what the prosecution was claiming was that Oscar and Reeva were having an argument that night. There were multiple neighbors that witnessed or heard a man and a woman screaming at each other, but the defense managed to disprove this claim, and they were able to explain where the first sound and the second sound came from, and for this to be accepted in court, the judge had to dismiss the witnesses. So that was basically thrown out, which, I don't know, that just like, that doesn't make sense to me, because how can three different households hear the same thing, testify that they heard the same thing, and then the prosecution comes, sorry, not the prosecution, the defense comes in and says, no, but this is where the sound came from, and this is where it came from, and then the judge throws the witnesses out. Like, surely, I don't know, but that was thrown out. So in an interview with Samantha Taylor, she shared bits of her relationship with Oscar. She said they started dating when she was age 17 and he was 24, which is already not okay. She's underage. He's almost 25, which is when your brain is fully developed. So already he has this advantage over her. A bit of a power imbalance is there because he's more emotionally mature and more mentally developed. So he can easily manipulate her. She's only 17 years old, like she's barely an adult. But okay, she said at first when they started dating, he was very charming and respectful. And over time, he started to show a darker side of his personality, and he became possessive and jealous, and what was the other word they used? Possessive, of course, possessive. Just all the signs of an insecure man. He also had a temper, not necessarily towards her, but towards other people. He became verbally and emotionally abusive. He would get upset with her over small things, tell her to send photos of what she was wearing and who she was sitting next to. He wasn't allowed to dress up, and she said he used to often look through my phone, ask me who my friends were. I think he had that control over who's in my life and who was not. I was his. She also testified in court. Samantha's mother, who was also quite close with Oscar, said that he had immense anger problems and the pressure that was on him was a lot for a young man to handle. In all of this, it's painting Oscar to be insecure, immature, hot-headed, which to me points to someone who could easily snap. So far, what I'm getting from all of this is that it's pointing to it wasn't an accident. You know what I mean? But that's just, all of this is alleged, first of all. And second of all, it's just my opinion. It's just what I'm getting from all the information that I found. During the trial, Oscar cried relentlessly, so much so that he would vomit. And one can see this two different ways. It's either Oscar is sad about the situation. I mean, obviously he shot Reeva. That's not what's up for debate here. It's whether he did it with intent. And it could be that he is so remorseful and so sorry that this happened, and that's why he's reacting this way. Or it could be he's upset that he got caught. He's upset that perhaps his privilege hasn't taken him as far as he thought it could. Perhaps he thought he could get away with this, with his story about thinking it was an intruder. I know that Oscar said that, or Oscar was very concerned about crime in South Africa, which is a true fear and concern for the average South African citizen. However, they try to make it seem as though Oscar was more scared, especially because of his disability. But throughout his life, all he's done is try to prove that he's just as able-bodied as the person next to him. So now you want to say, I don't know. There's this scene in Mindhunter, which I highly recommend to anybody that speaks to me. I'm like, have you watched Mindhunter? There's a scene in Mindhunter with Benji where he's being interviewed, questioned about the murder of his girlfriend, and he starts blubbering like a baby. And in the scene, it can also be seen as he's sad because his girlfriend is no longer there, or because he committed the crime. And this, I don't know, I just threw these two. It felt, when I watched that scene and when I see Oscar in court, it just had a similar feel to it. And in the series, I don't know, spoiler, so skip this if you don't want to hear this, but in the series, Benji ended up doing it, or being a part of the crime. The trial concluded after 6 months, and Oscar was convicted of culpable homicide and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. But the prosecution appealed, arguing that Oscar acted with intent to murder. So whether it was Reeva or not, he still acted with intent to murder. The court agreed and upgraded his conviction to murder and sentenced him to 13 years and 5 months in prison. Whether that is high enough or not, I don't think so. I don't think so. He murdered someone. 13 years, 5 months, he murdered someone. But anyway, the judge, Tokozile Masipa, said in sentencing Oscar, Reeva was young, vivacious, and full of life at the time of her death. The loss of life cannot be reversed. Nothing I say or do today can reverse what happened. Which is very true. However, I don't think that 13 years and 5 months is long enough. I just don't. Reeva's parents, Barry and June, never believed Oscar's stories, never believed Oscar's version of events, and In the documentary My Name is Reeva, they have forensic experts that found evidence that a fight broke out between Oscar and Reeva and that Oscar intended to shoot Reeva. I didn't mention this because, I mean, this all happened after the trial, after the case. It was already over. I also, I don't know, you know, we don't know. I mean, they say they found evidence. Why wasn't there why didn't they retry him then with all this new evidence? Maybe it was because he's already convicted of murder, was already in prison. I don't know. But this documentary was really good and I do recommend giving it a watch. It was filmed during the victim offender dialogue. So the family of the victim can go and speak to the person, the offender, and there can be some sort of conversation that can happen that can maybe give that family closure. During the victim offender dialogue, Barry, Reeva's father, went to meet with Oscar. But I mean, he's never going to say, I did it. But obviously, there was a conversation that happened that's not in the documentary. But I do recommend giving it a watch. It is really good. That is the case. And in my opinion, my turn. In my opinion, I do think that Oscar intended to shoot her. I don't think that it was premeditated. I think they had a fight. I think he snapped. And I think that Reeva ran to the bathroom and was trying to get away from him. There are a couple of other reasons. I, in my mind, can't imagine waking up in the middle of the night, going to take the fans in from the balcony, hearing a window, and not thinking to first check where my partner is. Like if I hear something in the bathroom and my partner was there one moment, I'm gonna check it. It's like 2 seconds to just look over and check if they're there. Then they're like, oh, it's too dark. Well, then I call for them. Are you there? Hey, are you in the bathroom? And if I don't hear anything, maybe grab my firearm if need be and go to the bathroom and call again. Like, hey, hey, hey. I don't believe that he shouted for the intruder to come out because wouldn't she have said, hey, it's me in here, it's me, it's me, it's Reeva. Wouldn't she have said that? That doesn't make sense. Just, it doesn't make sense. So that's like my first hole. Then again, I don't have any physical disabilities. Um, I don't own a firearm. I don't know how I would act in the situation. I just can't imagine being that scared that I would shoot first, then find out. It doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. Also, why did the neighbors hear a woman screaming? Where did this come from? For me, that is just not clear. And if anybody knows, like, maybe a bit more about why, it just that doesn't make sense to me. How can there be three different households that heard the same thing? How was that thrown out? How was that dismissed? It doesn't make sense to me. It was something, but I watched it years ago and I cannot find this. But it said that, so this is all alleged, but Carl, his brother, removed some of the cell phones from the house that morning. So I didn't include this in the case because I couldn't find clearly where this stated, but I know. Years ago, I watched something where they said that Carl had removed the cell phones from the house and then the police later collected it, but there was information that was removed from that. There's also lots of other things that were said that he was dating other women. But again, these are like all rumors and stuff. There's nothing set in stone because I couldn't find it. So that is the case of Oscar Pistorius. He is now free. He is roaming the streets again. And Reeva's life was lost because he made a mistake, if that's what you go with. It's so sad because it's not, he was on such a great path to success, you know, and so was she, and her life was just lost. And if you go with the version of events of the prosecution where they got into a fight and he shot her, she lost her life because of a selfish and insecure man. And if you go with Oscar's version of events, or the defense's events, then she lost her life because of a mistake, and honestly a reckless one. Either way, he did deserve to go to prison. I do think that his sentence should have been longer, but here we are, and that's that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you guys found this case interesting, and I mean, I tried to mention as many things as I possibly could regarding it being factual. I didn't want to take too many rumors and this and that, because you can't really build a case of rumors, right? I hope that Reeva is resting in peace. Unfortunately, her father, Barry, also passed away, and I hope that June Steenkamp is finding some sort of peace in her life. And yeah, that's the case. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be uploading another video soon, and I will see you next time.